Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our American Civil War series. We have the First Battle of Kernstown. Jackson in the Valley. I think this is Stonewall Jackson, perhaps. I'm not sure. Hit that like button, guys. Let's jump right into it. Warhawk. Love their logo. Our men fought bravely, but the enemy repulsed me. Many valuable lives were lost. Our God was my shield. His protecting care is an additional cause for gratitude. Stonewall Jackson to his wife. For a lot of people, this is a side note, there's a lot of generals and like men of military status that are just so eloquent with their writing comparatively to like what you would imagine they would have on their writing capabilities.
On October 7th, 1861, Thomas Jonathan Jackson, now famous throughout the entire Confederacy and even abroad in Europe for his role in the Battle of Manassas, which has earned him the immortal nickname of Stonewall, is promoted to the rank of Major General and appointed to the command of the newly formed Valley District of the Confederate Army, with its headquarters in Winchester, Virginia. Stonewall Jackson's mission is made clear from the start by his superiors. Prevent any federal army from advancing through the Shenandoah Valley to attack Richmond, and protect the valley from Union occupation.
Pretty simple.
The Shenandoah Valley is nicknamed the breadbasket of the Confederacy for being a major granary for the South and providing a majority of the foodstuffs for the Confederate cause. As such, it is strategically important to the Confederacy's war effort. Besides being a valuable southern breadbasket, the Shenandoah Valley is also a key overland route for rebel armies to outflank Washington to the north, or for Union forces to drive deep into the Confederacy to the south. The valley stretches in a northeastern direction, starting from southern Virginia in the city of Roanoke all the way up towards Winchester in the north. Its shape is like a knife pointed directly towards the north, as some put it. Both sides quickly recognize its significance. Indeed, Winchester, as the northernmost gate to the valley and the hub of 9 major wagon roads in the Winchester and Potomac Railroad, is so important that it will change hands 72 times throughout the course of the war.
72. Damn.
To keep the valley out of Union hands, Jackson is ordered there in November of 1861. Under his command at his first valley headquarters in Winchester are 2,000 mostly inexperienced troops. His gunners are so green they don't even know how to load their only 2 cannon. By the end of the year, however, he has 10,000 men of varying degrees of quality, including his old command at Manassas, the 1st Virginia Brigade, now, like its former commander, rebranded as the Stonewall Brigade. By March of 1862, Jackson's army has dwindled again to less than 5,000 men due to a bitterly cold winter campaign waged in northern Virginia and parts of what will become West Virginia along the western edge of the Shenandoah Valley. This campaign, waged by Stonewall Jackson in the snowy days of January 1st through 24th, 1862, is known as the Romney Expedition, named so for its ultimate objective of Romney, Virginia, now in West Virginia. Although Jackson had suffered few battle losses during the campaign, William Loring, in command of the division left behind to garrison several towns recaptured from the Federals, successfully petitioned the War Department for the troops to be withdrawn and reassigned.
There's Kernstown right below him,
depriving Stonewall of most of his men. Union commanders are not idle during this time either, but their attention is focused further to the east on the
Shields. That's my last name. I didn't know there was a Union guy named Shields. That's pretty cool. We're rooting for Shields. Hope he doesn't die this episode.
Maryland side of the Potomac River. From there, Union forces could either defend Washington, or if the Confederates remain quiet, launch an invasion of their own into the valley. Over the winter, 3 divisions are quietly assembled along the Potomac. With their support personnel, they number 38,000 men. This force was originally the 5th Corps of the Army of the Potomac in the late summer of 1861, but by now its detached status has redesignated the command as the Department of the Shenandoah. This newly raised field army is led by Major General Nathaniel P. Banks. At this time, Nathaniel Prentice Banks is, by seniority, the 4th highest ranking military officer in the Union Army. He's a well-connected political general from Massachusetts. From 1858 to 1861, Banks has served as the 24th governor of.
So he's got a lot of politics in his background. We've seen a few of these high-ranking officials in the army have some sort of politics, whether it be the senator that we also saw die, but I think we've seen a few more as well.
Of the state of Massachusetts. Before that, from 1857 to 1858, Banks had served in Congress as the 21st Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Wow.
And had served Massachusetts with prominence as a member of the House since 1853. He was criticized by many of his contemporaries as a political chameleon, having already switched through 2 other political parties until finally back in the Republicans before the outbreak of the Civil War. On June 11, 1861, Banks was appointed to the command of the Department of Annapolis in eastern Maryland, which would become in July of that year the Department of Maryland, and soon afterwards merged into the military district of the Potomac. By the end of February 1862, Major General Banks has crossed some of his.
And that's interesting because I think Annapolis is actually the headquarters of the Navy. Be sure. Annapolis, Maryland.
Forces into Virginia at Harper's Ferry. Major General Jackson has, by now, been back in Winchester for about a month. After hearing of Banks' move to Harper's Ferry, he realizes his force of 4,200 men is no match for the Federals. They pull out of Winchester on March 11th. It is none too soon. Banks, although slowed by the problem of getting his heavy equipment across the Potomac, arrives in Winchester the very next day, March 12th. With the Confederates in retreat, Banks feels comfortable in sending some of his command to aid Major General George B. McClellan in his upcoming Peninsula campaign. On March 14th, Brigadier General John Sedgwick's division starts marching east. Then, on March 17th, Banks sends Brigadier General James Shields' 1st Division after Jackson, who has retreated 18 miles to Strasburg. James Shields, like his commanding officer, is a political appointee to military office.
He's Irish? I have a lot of Irish in me as well. There's got to be something there. There's got to be some sort of connection. You guys see it? You guys see it? I don't have the mustache, but...
Unlike Banks, however, Shields is also an aggressive soldier. In 1842, he had challenged an out-of-office politician to a duel over an alleged libel. Fortunately, the duel never took place. The politician's name was Abraham Lincoln. By the time the war broke out, the men had settled their differences and become friends. In addition, Shields has some practical military experience, having served as a brigade commander during the Mexican War.
And we've seen a lot of these people on both sides, more on the Confederate side because of the Southern, well, I can't even say for sure on that one, but we've definitely seen on both sides the Mexican-American War was a huge, probably like one of the only opportunities a lot of these people have for experience at this point.
Shields wastes no time marching his men to Strasburg, then another 5 miles southwest of Woodstock the next day. Jackson, though, is not in the neighborhood. Stonewall has brought his command to Mount Jackson, some 37 miles southwest of Woodstock. Between Jackson and Shields are Colonel Turner Ashby's troopers of the 7th Virginia Cavalry Regiment, acting as a very effective screen for the tiny main force. A few of Shields' own cavalrymen actually reach the Mount Jackson area, but are prevented by Ashby's men from learning anything about Jackson's deployment. Over March 19th and 20th, Shields brings his entire 1st Division back to Winchester. There, the first of a number of faulty intelligence reports that will eventually lead to the Battle of Kernstown are delivered. In it, Shields affirms to Banks that only a small Confederate cavalry contingent remains in the Shenandoah Valley. Banks couldn't have been happier. His assignment has proven far easier than expected. He orders a 2nd Division under Brigadier General Alpheus S. Williams to leave for McClellan's command the next day. Banks himself returns to Washington on March 22nd. This leaves only Shields' 7,000-man 1st Division in the Valley.
Oh no. Oh no. This ain't looking good.
In addition to this force, he has 750 cavalry and 900 artillerymen with 24 guns. Offhand, this appears to be plenty. With the Union confidently pulling out of the Shenandoah Valley, having barely raised a sweat, the stage now belongs to Colonel Turner Ashby, the extravagant cavalier who has earned the nickname of the Black Knight of the Confederacy for his handsome looks and mannerisms, Southern chivalry, and his cavalry command.
Cavalry commanders are always, at least what I've seen, the most audacious slash bodacious slash, I don't know. They really want to portray an image, if that makes sense.
He and his troopers have done a magnificent job screening Jackson from Union horsemen and have followed Shields back down the valley to Winchester. On the evening of March 21st, Ashby sends word to Stonewall Jackson that large numbers of enemy soldiers are leaving for the east. Jackson, just as incensed as Banks is elated, has as much vaunted foot cavalry as his men become known for their long distances covered in forced marches during the campaign, marching back northeast by dawn. Besides defending the valley, his orders are also to tie down excess Union troops that could be used to threaten Richmond. So far, it appears he has failed. This galls him. Except for Jackson's movement, most of March 22nd is quiet. Late in the day, however, Colonel Ashby becomes antsy and restless. Around 4 p.m., he moves up his artillery, chews Virginia Battery along with the Ashby Horse Artillery, and begins shelling Union skirmishers posted on the southern outskirts of Winchester. At first, Ashby is successful, forcing the Union troops back towards the town. However, Shields reacts immediately and brings up reinforcements, leading them himself. Skirmishing is heavy, but eventually Colonel Ashby is forced back. The shooting dies out around sunset, with the Union troops halting about halfway between Winchester and Kernstown. Shields, however, is out of the fight. He has suffered a broken arm from a shell fragment. As he is leading the battle, Shields orders Colonel Nathan Kimball, commander of the 1st Brigade, to take command of the division. Kimball, also a veteran in the Mexican War, thus becomes the 3rd commanding officer to lead the division in just 3 weeks. The original commander, Brigadier General Frederick Lander, has died of illness on March 2nd. Shields himself had taken command only 2 weeks earlier. Overnight, Shields sends Kimball orders to clear Ashby's observation force from the area. The wounded commander also sends a brigade north to confuse the enemy, but keeps it within marching distance of Winchester. In the meantime, Ashby delivers another report to Jackson. Based on his observations, some intelligence from misinformed Confederate sympathizers, the cavalry officer tells Stonewall that the Union forces before them number only 3,000 men in 4 regiments, a small cavalry contingent, and 1 battery of artillery, and even these are scheduled to return to Harper's Ferry.
So really bad intelligence.
On the 23rd, Shields' ruse has worked all too well. On March 23, 1862, the fighting resumes early, marking the opening actions of the Battle of Kernstown. Colonel Kimball's 1st Brigade continues to push back Ashby's cavalry, although it has become reinforced with 4 companies of early arriving infantry. At this point, the key event of the day occurs. The pressure on Ashby is enormous, and he continues to retreat all the way to the other side of Kernstown. In doing so, he abandons the single most important piece of terrain in the area, a small knoll called Pritchard's Hill just north of the village, which happens to be the only high ground in the area and is also centrally located. Realizing the hill's importance, Kimball stations his entire 1st Brigade plus 2 batteries of artillery, Battery A, West Virginia Light Artillery, and Battery H, 1st Ohio Light Artillery, in a strong defensive position. From there, he has full command of the battlefield below. Kimball, probably in an effort to paint himself as an energetic, bold leader, later puts the completion time of these movements as early as 8 a.m. Other sources set the action between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. In any event,
A 3-hour difference doesn't matter.
what cannot be disputed is that Kimball spends several hours awaiting developments and ignoring orders streaming from Shields back in Winchester.
Yeah, listen to Shields, man.
In this, he is correct. Shields' information about ongoing events is inevitably out of date by the time Shields' orders, in turn, reach Kimball.
Oof.
In the meantime, Kimball completes his preparations, moving Colonel Jeremiah C. Sullivan's 2nd Brigade and Battery L, 1st Ohio Light Artillery,
We got gray shirts still in 1862? Come on, guys.
to his left flank, even with the southern edge of Pritchard's Hill, and holding Colonel Erastus B. Tyler's 3rd Brigade as a reserve out of sight behind the hill. His right flank is left open. Kimball then, according to his report, determined to remain on the defensive. About mid-afternoon, Jackson arrives at Kernstown. After conferring with Ashby, he is content that the majority of the small Union force is entrenched on Pritchard's Hill, directly in front
Irish. What does that mean? Like Irish immigrants? Or like Irish?
of him. Unfortunately, he breaks one of his own rules and fails to reconnoiter the situation for himself, opting to accept Ashby's report at face value. To his right, Jackson knows, is another contingent of enemy troops. Although it appears obvious to him that this force cannot be very large, the terrain is forbidding. The Union soldiers are deployed along Hog Run, which runs east to west. In addition, Confederate troops will have to cross large areas of open territory before reaching the run, exposing them to fire from Pritchard's Hill. An assault up the hill directly in front of him is enticing because the important Valley Turnpike runs along the eastern foot, but Jackson quickly realizes that such an attack by his dog-tired men would be futile. Still, the left flank holds much promise. It is free of enemy troops, and its commanding feature, Sandy Ridge, is covered by dense forest that would provide cover from the guns on the hill. In addition, Hog Run breaks into 2 forks between Kernstown and Pritchard's Hill, neither of which is much more than a stream. The northern fork snakes back towards the hill where Jackson doesn't want to go anyway, while the southern fork is both short and shallow. The troops who couldn't march around it could easily ford it. The woods to the west, then, would be where Jackson would try to outflank the Yankees.
Say nothing about it. We are in for it. Oh, they're Stonewall Jackson's his first name now.
Jackson gives the order to deploy. A few of Ashby's men are sent to skirmish along Hog Run and hold the flank while the rest of the cavalry and his 3 brigades will left and march for the woods. Almost from the start, however, things begin to unravel. Jackson's lead brigade, the 3rd Brigade under Colonel Samuel Fulkerson, marches off smartly under the covering fire of rebel cannon in the vicinity of Kernstown. The return fire, however, is deadly and far more hardy than anticipated. The Southerners run for safety of the ridge. Jackson, chastened, reacts with something close to panic. He orders 1 regiment of the Stonewall Brigade to move forward to support Fulkerson. The brigade's commander, Brigadier General Richard B. Garnett, later to become a key figure in the battle, hurries off to get the 33rd Virginia underway. While he is away, a second command arrives from Jackson, ordering him to move up the entire brigade. Unfortunately, Garnett isn't around to receive it. Jackson sees only a quarter of Garnett's men moving and grows furious. He personally takes command of the stationary units and orders them forward. Garnett now gets news of Jackson's second set of orders and, totally confused, halts the 33rd Virginia in place while he goes off to get clarification. Meanwhile, 2 of the 3 regiments Jackson is commanding wander off.
Okay, so just one incompetence.
Their officers unsure if they should be following Garnett's or Jackson's orders. Colonel Kimball, in the meantime, is enjoying an eagle's eye view of the Confederate confusion. Although he certainly must be enjoying the spectacle, especially since some of it is occurring within range of his guns, he's also shrewd enough to realize that his right flank is being threatened. He orders...
I mean, look how many people he's got on reserve. 110th Pennsylvania. They start at 1? There's 110 of them?
his hidden reserve brigade to counter the enemy movements.
I don't know.
Eventually, Jackson gets his command somewhat straightened out. Fulkerson's two tiny regiments, only 400 men, have plodded on and find themselves emerging from the woods. Halfway across, a clearing runs a stone wall half a mile long. At the same time, Kimball's reserve brigade emerges from the other side of the clearing. The Confederates win the race for the wall. The situation stabilizes. The Union attempts 2 assaults on the wall, but both are repulsed. Garnett brings up most of the Stonewall Brigade, taking up position along the wall to Fulkerson's right. Kimball moves his own infantry off Pritchard's Hill and attacks Garnett. The fighting now becomes furious as the Stonewall changes hand twice over the next 2 hours.
Once again, the 5th Ohio, what are you guys doing?
Meanwhile, Jackson has become painfully aware of the trap. A subordinate has found a high clearing which he can see Kimball's men coming off Pritchard's Hill. His report is far more accurate than Ashby's. He sees 9,000 to 10,000 Federals in the area. "Say no more of it," Jackson replies. "We are in for it." The impasse at the Stonewall continues until about 6 p.m. Union troops come on in wave after wave while the Confederates resolutely counterattack and then defend their ground, until finally the Stonewall Brigade runs out of ammunition. In addition, Union cavalry are beginning to demonstrate around the southern left flank. The crisis is reached.
Who's he talking to, though?
Garnett later says that if he had only been able to confer with Jackson, Stonewall would have concurred with his subsequent decision to withdraw. Jackson, however, is in the rear, bringing up a reserve regiment in an attempt to break the stalemate. Garnett holds off as long as he thinks possible, but feels compelled to eventually sound the retreat. Unfortunately, the retreat soon becomes a rout. Suddenly, Jackson finds himself swimming in a ragged sea of frightened soldiers now headed in the opposite direction. Moving on, he finds Garnett, but between the two of them, they are unable to rally the troops. Jackson's antiquated admonition to give them the bayonet holds no sway with soldiers who are out of bullets.
Give them the bayonet, they're gone, sir.
In short order, Fulkerson's men too are forced to retire. Their right flank is exposed. They too run off in panic. Fortunately, the 2 brigades that had bore the brunt of the Union fighting are too disorganized for an effective pursuit. Jackson, ever an optimist, hopes that the 5th Virginia Infantry Regiment might still win the day. But Garnett makes a decision that later leads to his court-martial by Jackson. Instead of ordering the 5th Virginia forward to attack as Jackson wished—
Attack what, sir? Attack! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a stupid court-martial. Jackson should be court-martialed for suicide. For homicide, not suicide. Because it's a suicide mission for the 5th of Virginia to take on all of that. Defend the rear guard. That's literally what should be happening right now. At this time.
Garnett has it deployed in a defensive position to cover the retreat. It is gratifyingly effective in this role, garnering enough time to allow Jackson to move his last brigade into the area in support. That night, Jackson pitches his camp 4.5 miles back down the Valley Turnpike at Newtown. The Battle of Kernstown is over, ending in one of Stonewall Jackson's only defeats of his Civil War career. Beginning that night and continuing to the end of his life, Shields brags that he is the only Union general to defeat Jackson in an open battle.
I think Jackson, and I've seen this so many places, I think Jackson's horribly overrated as like a top general.
While technically correct, the honor, if not the rank, more accurately belongs to Kimball. On the day Shields resumes command after recovering from his injuries, April 30th, Kimball is promoted to brigadier general for his victory over Stonewall Jackson. The hapless Garnett, however, has incurred Jackson's wrath. Although widely regarded as Jackson's best general, Garnett is arrested immediately after the battle for his unauthorized retreat. The affair actually gets as far as—
He saved lives, though. I mean, what are you gonna penalize him for all the men that panicked under him? The only thing he did was like organize the the rear guard. That's stupid.
As a court-martial in August, but after only 2 officers testify, one of them Jackson, the war intervenes and nothing more comes of it. Garnett remains an admirer of Jackson and is even an honorary pallbearer at Stonewall's funeral.
Which Stonewall gets killed by friendly fire, which is kind of funny, but not funny at the same time.
Despite his well-publicized difficulties with him, Kernstown is not the first run-in between the two, only the most serious. It is fair to say that, at least, Garnett's admiration of Jackson is not mutual. Garnett returns to command, but he will be killed at Gettysburg a year later while he is leading a brigade on horseback in the famed Pickett's Charge. The Battle of Kernstown is, all things considered, a minor engagement. According to Jackson, he has 3,087 infantry and 27 cannon under him. Ashby's cavalry numbers only 290, which Jackson generously attributes to heavy cavalry duty and the extent of the country to be protected in his official report. However, a month later, Jackson relieves Ashby of command for his lack of discipline. Among the charges is that Ashby allowed the other half of his troops to wander about the Kernstown area on their own because Ashby did not believe they would be needed until the next day. Ashby gets his command back 3 days later after a vigorous protest.
Sounds like Jackson was opposed a lot.
The total Confederate losses over the 2 days numbered just 80 dead, 375 wounded, and 263 captured or missing. On the other side, Shields reports his losses at 118 killed, 450 wounded, and 22 captured or missing.
It seems that a lot of these... Now, the captured has always been... Seems like the Confederates always get more captured. Their men captured, but the Union always get more people killed. It seems that way.
Yet, despite these small numbers, Kernstown is one of the most decisive strategic engagements of the war. The Confederates, although soundly defeated, ultimately gained the most. The victory itself is insignificant, but the fact that it is fought at all is a great deal to both sides. Indeed, the ramifications of this odd little affair reach all the way to the desk of President Lincoln.
Not too far
None of the
away.
Union generals with an interest in the Shenandoah Valley, Shields, Banks, or McClellan, could believe that Jackson would attack while being so outnumbered. They never realized that Jackson thinks he outnumbers them. In their eyes, Jackson must be a far greater threat than in fact he actually is. Banks is ordered to return immediately to the Shenandoah Valley with Williams' 9,000-man division. Lincoln, who suffers from an almost pathological fear of a Confederate attack upon the federal capital, withdraws a 40,000-man corps from McClellan's command, Major General Irvin McDowell's First Corps. These troops would protect Washington from the Fredericksburg area. Meanwhile, McClellan's Peninsula campaign would just have to do without them. In addition, Lincoln takes a further 10,000-man division and sends it to join 5,000 other Union troops guarding against Jackson in Western Virginia, not yet a federal state at this time. At the very least, Jackson's 3,600 men have tied up almost 65,000 Union troops at a time when a decisive campaign to end the war quickly is being undertaken. Later, 10,000 men from Fredericksburg reinforce McClellan, but so great is Lincoln's fear that he never allows the remaining 30,000 men to march south and support McClellan with an attack on Richmond's north side. Stonewall Jackson may have suffered a defeat at Kernstown, but he has only lost the first round of the campaign. He is not out of the fight entirely. Over the next month and a half, Jackson will regroup his depleted Valley District, receive more reinforcements in the form of Major General Richard S. Ewell's division, and prepare to strike back against the Union Army. Jackson's Valley campaign is only just getting started.
Thoughts? Not a ton. I mean, it's just more or less a skirmish that happened, not a huge battle. The most of the battle that happened was at that wall, which was the Confederates were trying to flank on the right side of the Union because that hill was taken by the Union and that was the high ground. And from there, they just got spooked. And then someone got court-martialed. It was a very interesting, odd skirmish battle. Not a ton happened. not a ton happened. It was more like a cat and mouse prior to the setup, and then when it went down, it was like an initial push to the left after setup, and then after they were matched on the Union side, they got pulled out. That was that. And then some, some change-ups at the back end. So overall, it looks like, they're 3,000 or 4,000 men cornered by 40, 50, 60,000 from DC to West Virginia to Virginia. So they're not looking good, but they are strategically in this location, more or less just sitting at this point. So don't have a lot to say. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will check you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.